Hello everyone, welcome to the second part of the session on market in action. Today we'll discuss about the elasticity, that is the responsiveness of demand and supply due to change in different factors like price of a particular good, income or price of related goods. So for that, let's first recall the law of demand and law of supply. The law of demand states that as the price of good or service increases, the quantity demanded by consumer decreases and vice versa. This means that there is an inverse relationship between the price of a good and the quantity demanded of the good. On the other hand, when we talk about the law of supply, it states that as the price of a good or service increases, the quantity supplied by producers increases and vice versa. This means that there is a direct relationship between the price of the good and quantity supplied. Now coming up to elasticity of demand and supply, which means the responsiveness of demand or responsiveness of supply to different factors like change in prices or change in income of consumers or change in price of related goods. So let's first understand demand elasticity. That means elasticity of demand can be described into three different types, that is price elasticity of demand, cross price elasticity of demand or income elasticity of demand. So price elasticity of demand is the responsiveness of demand to change in price of a particular good or service. Cross price elasticity of demand is the responsiveness of demand to change in price of related or unrelated products. And income elasticity of demand is the change or response of demand to income of consumers. That means the consumers' real income. Let's study price elasticity of demand in detail. So it is a measure, it is an economic measure that helps us in understanding the responsiveness of demand relative to change in price of the good or service. So whatever might be the change in price, whatever might be the percentage change in price of the product, in response to this change, what is the change in what is the change in the quantity demanded of the product? That can be determined by price elasticity of demand. So the formula simply says that percentage change in quantity demanded divided by the percentage change in price of the product. So for example, if there is a 10% change in price of the product and in response to this change in price, the quantity demanded changes by 20%. So the price elasticity of demand will be 20 divided by 10, that is equal to 2. So based on the elasticities of demand, they can be categorized into 5 types. First is elastic demand. So elastic demand is the one in which the quantity demanded changes at a larger degree than the price change. So if there is a change in price by 10% and quantity demanded changes by 20%, then it is said that demand is elastic. In inelastic demand, that is the second type of elasticity, the quantity demanded changes by a smaller proportion than the price. So if the price changes by 20%, demand will change by only 10%. That leads to inelastic demand. An important concept to be understood here is the absolute value concept. So while calculating price elasticity of demand, we ignore the plus or the negative sign that comes up after calculating this. This is because we only find out the absolute value, and if this absolute value is more than 1, it is said that the demand is elastic, and if it is less than 1, it is said that demand is inelastic. Third is perfectly elastic demand. So at a constant price, if the demand keeps on changing, that means the prices are fixed but the demand keeps on fluctuating, it is said that demand is perfectly elastic. And here ED, that is elasticity of demand, is equal to infinity. The fourth category is perfectly inelastic demand, that the quantity demanded remains constant whatever may be the price of the product. So at different prices, quantity demanded remains same. So in this case, it is said that demand is inelastic in nature, that is perfectly inelastic, and ED will be equal to 0. And the last category is unit elastic demand, which says that the proportion of change in quantity demanded and the proportion of change in price are equal. That means the percentage change in quantity demanded is also 10%, for example, and the percentage change in price is also 10%. And in this case, the elasticity of demand will be equal to 1 in absolute value. So we have a formula for calculating this price elasticity of demand, that is known as the midpoint formula. So which says that the price elasticity of demand can be calculated by first calculating the midpoint of the quantities, the original and the new quantity demanded, and the midpoint of the price, that means the original price and the new price, and then calculating the difference between them and finding out the ratio between these two now. So Q2 here is the new quantity demanded, Q1 is the original quantity demanded before the price has changed, and similarly P2 is the new price and P1 is the original price. So one very interesting concept that can be seen in this graph is the flatter the curve, the more elastic will be. So if we have 3 or more curves or 2 or more curves in a same graph, so the flatter curve will always be more elastic in nature. So there are different determinants of price elasticity of demand. That means that different areas determine what will be the elasticity of demand for each kind of product. So first is the availability of substitute. So if there are different alternative options available for a product or service, then the demand will be elastic in nature. But if there are lower number of substitutes available or no substitutes available, then demand will be inelastic. Nature of the commodity says that if it is a luxury product, demand will easily fluctuate with change in price. That means demand will be elastic. But if it is a necessity or a necessary product, then demand might not fluctuate due to change in price, and thus demand will be inelastic. Third is the proportion of income spent on the good. So if huge proportion of income is spent, then demand can be elastic. But if a very lower or negligible kind of proportion is spent on the good, then demand is said to be inelastic. Then the definition of market, that means if it is a narrowly defined market, it is said that more substitutes are available, more number of alternatives are available, then the demand will be more elastic, and in other case it will be inelastic. Second type of demand elasticity, that is cross price elasticity of demand. So cross price elasticity of demand calculates the percentage change in quantity demanded of good X divided by the percentage change in price of good Y, where X and Y can be related goods or unrelated goods. If these are related goods, then it can be a substitute product or a complementary product. So if X and Y are substitutes, then cross price elasticity of demand will always be positive, because if there is an increase in price of good Y, then the quantity demanded of good X will also increase, and that is why cross price elasticity is always positive in this case. If X and Y are complements, then this means that if the price of product Y increases, then the quantity demanded of good X will reduce, and that is why in this case the cross price elasticity of demand will be negative, because of an inverse relationship between these two products, quantity demanded and price. If X and Y are unrelated, that means the price of Y will not affect the quantity demanded of X. In this case, the cross price elasticity will always be 0, because these are unrelated products. Next type of demand elasticity is income elasticity of demand, which shows the change in quantity demanded or the responsiveness of quantity demanded due to change in consumers' real income or the population's income. So whatever might be the change in consumers' real income, if it is affecting the quantity demanded of the product, then this will tell us whether the elasticity of demand is high or low, and this results into income elasticity of demand. Another concept of responsiveness that is related to supply, which is known as price elasticity of supply. So price elasticity of supply helps us in measuring the responsiveness to the supply of the good or service after there is a change in price of the product or service. So if the supply of a good will increase when its price rises, and vice versa, that is understood by the law of supply. So if there is an increase in the price of the product and the responsiveness of supply, that means the supply also increases with a higher degree or a higher proportion, then it is said that supply is more elastic. So this can again be divided into 5 broad categories, that is perfectly elastic, elastic, perfectly inelastic, inelastic, and unitary elastic. So when at different prices the supply remains constant, whatever might be the price but the supply is constant, it is said to be perfectly inelastic, where E is equal to 0. But when at constant price the supply keeps on changing, it is said to be perfectly elastic, and here E will be equal to infinity. That means elasticity of supply will be equal to infinity. Next is unitary elastic, which means that the percentage change in quantity supplied is equal to percentage change in price. That means E is equal to 1. But when E is greater than 1, it means the supply is more elastic, which means that the percentage change in quantity supplied is more than the percentage change in price, and vice versa is the case in less elastic supply, where the percentage change in quantity supplied is less than the percentage change in price. This is the formula for calculating the price elasticity of supply, that is percentage change in quantity supplied divided by the percentage change in price. So till now we studied about different type of elasticities of demand, which is because of different factors related to the price of the product or income of the consumers or prices of related goods or unrelated goods. Then we studied about the different categories of elasticity of demand, and then we studied about the midpoint formula that will help us in calculating the price elasticity of demand. Then we studied about price elasticity of supply and its formula and its broad categories. In the next session, we will be doing numericals based on these formulae, and that will help us in knowing that how can we actually describe when we get an absolute value out of the formula. If it is greater than 1, then it is elastic. If it is less than 1, then it is inelastic. If it is equal to 1, then it is unitary elastic. And similarly is the case for supply. So with different formula we can calculate the elasticity of demand or elasticity of supply, and then get to know about the nature of demand or elasticity and supply elasticity. So thank you.